Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about African Americans and how the decade of 1950, so 1950 to 1960, the most important moments in their fight to move forward in terms of equality. And while this is very important to learn about history, we have to also recognize that there are still, while they did make tremendous steps back then, even now it's not enough, and there's still more change that needs to happen, which can be shown through the riots and the murder of George Floyd. Just current events, a time in history. Okay, so some terms we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about the Brown versus Board of Education. So during this trial, the Supreme Court of the U.S. decided that it was completely unconstitutional to have segregation in American society, no matter if the school of the whites was academically equal to schools for African Americans. No matter what, it was unconstitutional. So it was finally a decision that was ruled to help push forward with equality. Another key term we're going to be talking about is Emmett Till. He's a name we need to remember, just like we're going to need to remember George Floyd. In all the days to come, we're going to need to continue to remember Emmett Till, who was a 14-year-old boy who was lynched in Mississippi in 1955 after he was accused of attacking a white woman in a supermarket. So again, this was a completely unfair murder, which super unfortunately connects back to recent events. We don't want to keep repeating our past mistakes, which is why we learn history. But another term is Rosa Parks. So she was an activist, a really famous activist. I'm sure you've heard of her. In the civil rights movement, she's mostly known for her part in the Montgomery bus boycott. Now you may be asking, what is Montgomery bus boycott? Well, perfect. So this was a political and social protest in which African Americans refused to ride city buses in an attempt to push back racial segregation and break down that barrier. Now, what is segregation? Segregation is a systematic separation of people determined by their racial or ethnic groups, and it affects pretty much all parts of their daily life. So where they go to the bathroom, where they can sit on the bus, which water fountain they use, which school they go to, every single part of life it affects. Now, with all parts of life, segregation has its opposite, which is integration. So this, of course, is the opposite, and it's basically a movement with the goal to push down all the barriers of segregation and end discrimination once and for all in America. Now, lastly, we're going to be talking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who I'm sure many of you have heard of because a lot of times he's a spokesperson he's considered one of the biggest spokespersons in the civil rights protest. So he was an American activist and minister at the time and leader in the civil rights movement until he was unfortunately assassinated. So those are some key terms and people throughout from 1950 to 1960 that helped push back racial segregation and break down barriers and finally allow equality for all. Thanks for watching. Bye!